Um, I would like to call, I'd like to call the meeting to order. It's 6:30.
Hello, hello.
Let us call the meeting to order. All right, it's past 6:30 now, so I'd like to call the Tuesday, December 1st meeting, 2015, of the Champaign County Board Facilities Committee to order, and would like a roll call vote. Roll call, please.
Anderson. Here. Hartke.
Here.
Rector.
Here.
Quisenberry.
Here.
Rosales.
Here.
Schwartz. Here. Maxwell.
Here. Thank you for all attending this evening. Would like approval of the agenda.
So moved. So moved. Second.
Motion by Rosales, second by Hartke. All those in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. Item 4 is the approval of minutes of the November 3rd, 2015 meeting. And so I would ask for a motion to approve those minutes.
So moved. Second.
Okay, Mr. Hartke and Mr. Rector. All those in favor?
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carried. Item 5, any public participation. I have no slips. I don't see anybody here that might wish to. So I will close public participation at this time and move on to item 6, communications. And I would like to, at this time, take the opportunity to thank Geraldo for chairing the November meeting. I understand that you did a great job and appreciate you stepping in for me.
Had a good mentor.
And as most of you know by now, I was in Australia. And generally, I like to try to pick up some ideas when I travel, especially when I talk with folks, some of the citizens. I brought back a couple clippings that you might be interested in reading. One is about their management of their aquifers down there. They are very serious about managing their aquifer and water supply down there because, in part, they don't have any to speak of. So they've got a real interest in doing that, and they're probably several years ahead of us in managing their aquifers compared to what we do here in the state of Illinois. So if in case you'd like to see a little bit about what they do down there, I have a clipping here for you. I also read an article from a rural paper concerning the problems they were having with a rural small nursing home. It was old, but a lot of their problems, competition, regulation, and this sort of thing sounded familiar to us. So I have that in case you'd like to just take a look to see what other countries are doing and are being faced with. With that, I would like to close communications. And are there any communications from you, Patsy, or any of the committee members? All right, then we'll go on to the item 7, discussion of the facility condition assessment report. And I asked Dana to include this item because I feel like we need to talk about it and start the discussion. So I'm going to take a little time to editorialize, and then I'll seek your input, and maybe we can get a discussion at least started on this. Item 7, discussion of the facilities condition assessment report. Also, we could say, where do we go from here? I included this item in order for this committee to begin to focus on and perhaps work towards solution to our deferred maintenance backlog for county-owned buildings. The Bailey Edwards Facility Condition Assessment is an assessment of current condition of the county's building inventory. It is not a capital renewal and facility master plan. Until we can see our way clear to fund such plans, we must proceed with the information we have. This assessment, coupled with the Sheriff's Operation Master Planning Report, should provide sufficient information for this committee to move forward in formulating a rational approach to the county deferred maintenance backlog. The old county home, which the Bailey Ed's report lists as the Elias original building, distorts the assessment. However, including the Elias original building clearly indicates it, along with a couple of smaller buildings, should be removed from the county's inventory as soon as possible. Funding scenario 3 indicates it would cost approximately $2 million to demolish the Elias old structure. The first question is, where do we get the $2 million? Moving on, the facilities condition report indicates Champaign County ought to spend about $4.5 to $5 million per year over the next decade to address the deferred maintenance backlog. The Sheriff's Operation Master Planning Report indicates it will cost about $30 million in today's dollars to move out of the downtown jail and consolidate the corrections facility and administrative offices at the satellite jail location. We have a responsibility to provide a safe, efficient, and humane environment for the inmates, population, and for our correctional employees. An updated correctional facility needs to have space for medical and mental health services. It needs additional space for family visits, counseling, and educational and training programs. Next month, Bailey Edwards will report our deficiencies, our ADA deficiencies, along with an estimated cost to remediate those deficiencies. It will be mandatory for the county board to fund the county ADA remediation in a timely manner. It is important to note the county has been funding building maintenance at about $835,000 a year in recent years. And I mean recent only about the last 2 or 3, including this next fiscal year. Going forward, we must focus on the most pressing issues. That is the ADA deficiency, remediation, life safety issues, roofing. Long term, we must either find the money to maintain our buildings or decide which buildings to remove from the inventory or defer maintenance on. And I'm going to suggest to you now, it is not too early to discuss whether or not to put the question for additional revenue before the voters next November. In my opinion, we are running out of time because in order to do so, we must have a plan for reducing our deferred maintenance backlog. We must be united as a committee and a county board in formulating our plan and presenting our request. And we alone cannot sell a tax increase to the voters. We must have the support of community leaders and community organizations and be willing to present our case to our constituents. Building a consensus and implementing a successful marketing plan will take time. You've listened to me long enough now, and I would like to hear your comments, the members of this committee, ideas and suggestions. And then finally, what would you, the last question I would have for you to consider is, what would you like to see accomplished before the January meeting? So I'll throw that out to other comments from the board. And did I see you, Mr. Quisenberry?
One thing I want to throw in there, because I had a chance to make this comment when you weren't here last time, and that is I'm looking at the adjusted facilities overview, the one that zeroes out Ilias and the correctional center and the boiler house. I still have a concern, and we'll need to address this in our discussion over this month and maybe the study session, that the original courthouse building values in this, I believe, are insufficient to maintain the building that we have. As they pointed out to us in the meeting last time, and they kind of reiterated this at our full board meeting last month, their plan or their APA or whatever their standards are is based on a box, really, and doesn't have any enhancements to it. It does recognize things like a coroner's office needs facilities and tools and things that an election storage facility doesn't need, but it doesn't recognize that a old courthouse with a clock tower and brickwork and some of the fancier features of the architecture, it doesn't have that in there. So while looking at that adjusted overview takes into account some things, at least two things I think are definitely going to need to happen in the long term. Maybe three things that have to happen when we're talking long term. I think that number, looking at that number and say, hey, that brings that down, I still think it's short of what's going on. The other piece of information that I need to have with regard to zeroing out ILEA's original building, the old county home, is what dependency our revenue from ILEA's renting that space. If we're talking about tearing it down to get that off our books and say we don't have to maintain it anymore, what part of that building contributes to the revenue that we get? I don't know if we've had a conversation with ILEA's about that, but we may still have to do it. But I want to understand if that affects our long-term revenue for renting that building to the purpose that it's currently being used for. So those were a couple things on my mind as you were talking there, Gary.
Thank you. Josh, please.
Yeah, this is something that I hit on when I mentioned it when we had the company here a couple of weeks ago. I think approaching things that are going to save us money on other bills first is probably the why, because this committee's not going to decide how we're going to pay for it. That's going to come out of finance, but we are going to be in charge of prioritizing what we act on first. I think finding energy savings, I think finding, ways to consolidate office space or consolidate storage space, things like that. I think those are probably ways to go at first. Roofs, the heating systems, the mechanics, the big items, yes, but we're going to have to hit them as we can. I think also we can look at liquidating some of our inventory of buildings. If we can find ways to consolidate certain county operations in other buildings and sell some buildings to create revenue and reduce our overall load, then that's certainly something we need to examine before we go to the people and ask for a tax increase. I would not include the nursing home among those, despite some people's desire to. I would also say that, in the past, regarding the courthouse, because I do agree with James on that, but in the past, I know that when it was originally redone, we did a lot with private donations over there. I think don't we still have a little chunk of money left, or did that go for, it went for something. But there was, at one time, we even recently had some money left over from that. I think we really need to hit the community up for that before we go on a tax increase that's going to, especially a regressive sales tax. And I know, go ahead and hit the nail on the head here, that's what people I think are talking about is a quarter-cent facility sales tax. Now, I personally, at this point, am going to be completely against that. I think there has to be another path for revenue. It is the most regressive tax increase we can find in this community, and also it hits our small downtown businesses the hardest. Champaign and Urbana already at 9%, going to 9.25% will not be helpful in our community. But I am open to other paths if that be it. And that's just my general comment.
Thank you. Geraldo.
I personally think that we should hear back from the Finance Committee to see what they have explored, possibly bonds and possibly other source of increase in revenues or fees, perhaps. But I think that we need to hear from that Financial Committee as if there's any revenue that we could draw from that we currently have in order to begin a systematic way of repairing a lot of these buildings and bringing them up to par. And I would tend to agree with Josh because I'm against raising any property taxes, so I would not endorse or support that moving forward.
Jack, please.
I'd just like to say that I agree with all of Mr. Harkey's comments, with the exception of the nursing home. I thought they were well said and well thought out. But I don't think we should exclude any particular buildings because of their function. Maybe that's a question best asked to the people that we're asking to increase their taxes to, or taxes, so, thank you.
Thank you, Jack. I intentionally was not wanting to include a discussion of the nursing home. That's almost a standalone issue. The nursing home basically at this time is funding its repairs. In addition, they are finding the money to transfer $300,000 a year to the county corporate fund in order to retire the bonds, the $4 million bond. I think we do have to include as far as the long-term deferred maintenance backlog and that sort of thing, but I would like to set the nursing home aside for a separate discussion, and we'll look at this on. I think we actually have made a decision. Begin to sound like it. Again, maybe you'll change your mind. But I'm hearing you don't want a tax increase, and I'm sorry, folks. If you want to reduce this backlog significantly, you're going to have to get additional revenues. And I hate to be the bearer of bad news, but I feel like my job is to be honest and straightforward and tell people the way I see it. They may not like to hear it, but we can struggle with this, and if the decision is made soon not to go for a tax increase, then we'll be looking at other ways, and including Josh's suggestion of possibly closing buildings and finding other means to defer the maintenance, and also to at least maybe find a way to patch up roofs and things to keep the water out of these buildings. But I'm willing to tell the people what I think as far as the need for additional revenue, whether it's sales tax or property tax. There'll be some that in favor of the property tax, some in favor of sales tax, most in favor of no tax. And but again, we cannot do this unless we are united as a county board. If we're going to go to the people with a 12 or 13 vote against the remaining portion of the county, it won't go. It will not pass, because you've got to have a united effort, and we've got to be dedicated to doing it. And unless we are willing to do this and go together hand in hand, both Republicans and Democrats, we cannot get it passed. So that's my opinion, and I have actually some experience of trying to get referendums passed. And I've done it with boards that are united, and I've failed to do it when boards are not united. So thank you, and I'm sorry for the extended editorial.
Yeah, I'm liking a lot what I hear from everybody, but the nursing home's just such a big part of it with what's being subsidized from here. So with all due respect, it's unrealistic to keep that separate. I mean, I just think they go hand in hand. So I wish we could keep it separate, but I don't think that's possible.
I'm just trying to, what do you mean by subsidized? I mean, are you suggesting there is some money that goes to the nursing home that can go to facility? Because that's not the case. The tax that goes to the nursing home is totally dedicated, just like the tax that goes to mental health. And I have my opinions about whether it should go there or not, but my opinions don't matter. It's been passed. I mean, you have $7 million going to mental health, or $8 million. that you can't touch. So, I mean, are we talking about the same thing, or you have some other
I mean, I'm
thoughts?
just saying, I think there's a lot of people out there that question if we should be in the nursing home business. I'm all for taking care of older people, but I'm getting a lot of people in the community that are wondering, we can't do everything. So if we're not gonna raise taxes, something's gotta be cut, something's gotta go. The nursing home's the type of thing to look at. I'm not saying we keep it, I'm not saying we get rid of it, but it's a big elephant in the room, and we gotta look at it.
Well, just to follow up, I mean, just that we are clear on the financial thing, whether your opinion is to close it or not. If you close the nursing home, you don't get an extra dollar to put into facilities. In fact, you're losing $300,000 that currently goes to corporate, general corporate to pay bonds.
I didn't say we got this committee, but it's gotta go somewhere.
Deb, do you want to just maybe clarify? I think there is a misunderstanding about what funds can go where. Some things are fungible and some things are not. So maybe you can clarify that.
Okay, I apologize. I'm just talking more philosophical. You know, I understand what you're saying, not disagreeing. I'm just saying philosophically, if there's people out there saying we shouldn't be in the nursing home business and we want a tax increase, it's kind of going to be hard to sell. So I'm talking about the philosophical part of it. I'm sure you're right on what you're saying on the operation. It's a philosophical thing.
I didn't want to continue down the nursing home road. I understand what you're saying, Rachel. I wish I understood it as well as you do, because I know you've got a good understanding and grasp of it. I look at it simplistically from my perspective. There's only so many dollars in our community, so to speak, and a certain amount goes to taxes, whether you're paying bonds, whether you're paying property taxes, sales taxes. They all mount up, and there's a certain amount we're paying for services, for county-provided services as a county-wide community. And the potential sale of the nursing home to allow it to operate freely within the marketplace of that industry, if it's removed that way from our roles, then we potentially, and gets back to the finances, we no longer have to keep paying for the construction bond, because if it's sold at a dollar amount, we could use portion of that dollars potentially to pay off that bond amount. Then we stop paying that, and there's a subsidy that's paid annually to help it going. Isn't it like 1.6 million? It's on the property tax.
It's right at 1.1.
Okay, 1.1. But my thinking of this is, now we're no longer taxing the people to pay off the construction bond. We're no longer paying 1.2 million. So that's gone, potentially. Just throwing it out there as a greater concept. Then, if we need to generate revenue to pay for the maintenance of the buildings, if it were an equal amount, just say it was, that amount that we're no longer paying towards a nursing home in different tax forms, it becomes revenue neutral, and we're able to maintain our buildings without having to continue to lose, it's a matter of interpretation, but pay money for the operation of the nursing home, because we no longer own it nor operate it. That's my thinking. But that wasn't really what I wanted to talk about, but I just thought I'd share it. I really kind of think this committee, and I suspect others will agree, yeah, this will go to finance eventually. Yes, they have to tell us what's available. I think we all know there's nothing available. We have to go out and seek revenue if nothing else is done. Now, one way might be to get rid of something that might be costing us something, and I talked about that with the nursing home, but I think maybe this committee needs to just consider we have what we have in buildings, and it's costing us so much to maintain them. How low can we go on our maintenance cost to operate those? Buy things that Josh had mentioned, and I listened carefully to how he explained that, and I totally agree with it. We need to look at our own real real estate portfolio and our operational needs and see what is it we need to have in our inventory and what don't we need? And how close can we get without hurting operations and our ability to provide services, to lower that amount to where it gets closer to becoming doable. And if taxes are required and a new tax source, and it's taken before the voters, if that were to happen, at least we can say, this is the best we can do, this is what we did. Help us provide the services we need to this community. We've done all we can. We've looked at this the best we can, and this is what we came up with. And we made this much in cuts, and now it's down to this, and we just can't cover this for, if that happens to be the case. Anyway, that's my thinking, just that if we could just focus on what we can do before we push this over to the Finance Committee, and before we ask them the question, how much can you afford, maybe we show them this is how much we've cut, and this is the best we can do. And then we'll have a better picture of what we can accomplish. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Jack. Any other comments? Geraldo?
Deb, are we currently receiving any revenue from the windmill farm?
The turbines went on to the equalized assessed valuation a couple of years ago, and the equalized assessed valuation is the basis for our property tax. But our property tax is what it is.
Oh, okay. And the other question was, if we were almost getting ready to bond out for another 30 million or 20 million or however much the satellite jail would be, couldn't we at least do half of that? We have already set aside $500,000, which is 500,000, to pay the additional bonds that we would bond out for. Maybe instead of taking out 20, we could take out 5, and with the $500,000 that we have, and looking to see what other revenue we could pull from, that perhaps we could pay the $10 million bond to bring our properties from poor to fair?
I'm not sure that we have any money to, I'm not sure what you're talking about in terms of the bonding out. I mean, there is a master plan, but there is no plan to bond anything out because there is no money to bond anything.
A few years ago, I think our credit rating was good enough to be able to sell bonds so that we could get enough to build a new pod at the satellite jail. I think that was the discussion several years ago. Whether we didn't do that, we didn't move forward in that. But I think our credit rating was good enough so that we can get a loan that would be paying out maybe 20 years into the future. And what I'm saying is, to the repayment of that would be how much per month or per year. If we're setting aside $500,000 a year now, and we could bring up another $250,000, that'll be $750,000 that we could pay towards this $10 million that would bring our properties to a good, fair to good condition instead of poor, and just tackle those properties that are in horrible, deplorable conditions, and maybe demolish some, but bring them up to at least a fair condition so that we won't have to spend that additional money if we do nothing.
Anybody else like to comment?
So the 4.5 million, whether it's too low or whatever, let's assume it's the right number, it's whatever. Is that an annual number, or is that the backlog? I mean, what part of that is the backlog? Because if you're saying that there's a backlog, then 4.5 is not enough. If that's what needs to be put in from now for eternity, then that means we didn't take care of the backlog. If you say, you see what I'm saying? I mean, I understand that it should be more than 800 we have now, but is it really 4.5 every year? In which case, where is the backlog? We're not paying for that?
As I understand, the backlog is around the $4.5 million for the next 10 years. That would keep our buildings within the fair rating on average.
And that's not building anything new.
That's correct. Granted, I believe we probably might not have to put that much into it. But this is a fairly good guess at this point in time. It's far better than we've had, and it gives us some numbers to work with. The $500,000 I think you're thinking about, Geraldo, we don't have. We've got it for the last 2 years, and we're going to get it for next year, but beyond that, I'm not sure that we will get it. The $500,000 wood bonds, and matter of fact, I asked this question today, just happened to find out from another presentation. $500,000 would bond about $7.5 million for 13 years.
Year and a half.
So, yeah, I mean, there's some options out there we could do if we had the $500,000 to begin with, and I'm not sure we've got it. There are a lot of things that maybe Deb can help me with this, but most of our money is tied up in personnel. We're talking about 60 to 70% of the money that we have to operate with our personnel cost. So our discretionary money to do these kind of things is only 30 to 40% of our budget. Maybe you can help me more detail, Deb.
Just as a big picture, your annual budget is $125 million. $35 million of that is the general fund. 70% of the general fund budget is personnel. 53% of the total budget is personnel of the total $125 million. But once you get out of the general fund, you're in special revenue funds where the revenues are specifically dedicated to specific purposes. You're in the RPC funds, which is about $20 million of your budget, which you don't have any ability to spend any money that they receive. And you're $17 million in the nursing home budget, $8 million in mental health and DD. So the real budget that you have to work with is general corporate, which again is right at $36 million. And yes, 70% of that is personnel. You all know how tight the general fund budget is. You see presentations. You know that we've made cuts. We have fewer personnel today than we did 8 years ago by about 10%. And in terms of consolidation of facilities, I understand what you're saying. What I can tell you from where I sit, most of your department heads are looking for space, not looking to eliminate space because they need greater space for storage and issues like that. I'm not aware. We have some tenants in this building, but we receive revenue from those tenants. So I think we've maximized the utilization of our buildings to the greatest extent possible. But certainly, you know, if this committee wanted to take a tour of, you'd have to dedicate a day. But if you wanted to go see every office in county government and see the kind of space that they're using and whether or not there are opportunities to consolidate, that's certainly something that you could look at.
Thank you, Deb. We could continue this discussion. I think it's been worthwhile. It's been robust. Or we could cut it off and move on with our agenda. I personally like to keep these meetings under an hour if we can. And we've got a lot to think about now. And I would encourage you to go back and listen to your constituents and to do some thinking about it. Feel free to call me anytime you'd like. Give me some idea, if you could, what you'd like for me to do the next month, other than maybe go somewhere and enjoy Christmas. But we do have a lot of work to do. The easy thing would be to do nothing, but it's not the responsible thing. So again, I thank you, and I think we'll move on to the next item unless there's further discussion on this item. And again, thank you for such a great discussion. The next would be the facility director's report, and I think Dana has a lot to report. He's been busy, and he's done a great job the last month or so.
Only the last month or so?
I give you. Last time I was here.
Just checking. Courthouse window project. Hopefully this is one of the last times we have to talk about it. We are, I've almost completed our punch list. We're down to 2 items. There are 15 rectangular panels to be placed, and those panels go basically on the first floor. It's the basement and the old courthouse windows that they already have an old panel on it, but to match the new window decor, they're being replaced. They're on order. They were received today by the subcontractor, as well as there are 3 windows of the dozen or so in the attic that need a couple pieces of metal each, and all that material was delivered today to the subcontractor. So Thursday or Friday of this week, they should be installing them. They don't need a lift or anything like that to get it done. They can do the first floor from the ground, obviously, and the metal can be placed in from the attic, from the inside, reaching outside. So for all intents and purposes, our project there should end by the end of this week. I do anticipate one last final payment request from Barbara Diadley. They've gotten about 60% of the dollars, total dollars that were the bid. If you remember, the bid was $183,200. They've been paid about $110,000 to date. So we'll wait for that last pay request. As soon as the rectangular panels and the window material gets placed in, both IGW, Barbara Diadley, and myself will do a walkthrough to finish off and sign off on the last piece of the punch list. Any questions on courthouse? Precast panels. To date, Satellite Jail and JDC are both 100% complete. Reminder, Satellite Jail, we replaced all of the precast panel joints, and we we cut into a significant number of cracks and replaced material in there. Building was then completely painted over, so you wouldn't see the repair material. At JDC, we replaced all of the panel joints. We're about 60% done at County Highway. The east side, the south side are complete. Where the roof abuts to create a joint into the panels has been completed in terms of replacing the seal. We really only have the north side and some joints on the west side to finish. But based upon temperatures and thresholds from the manufacturers of material that we're using, we're going to shut down the project for the remainder of the winter. We'll restart when weather permits in the springtime, so sometime probably the end of March, beginning of April, when temperatures are, back up into the high 40s, low 50s. We will restart the project and finish it. It should only take a couple of weeks to finish it off, but I just feel like that's the right thing to do at this time. Talking both the occupants, Jeff, of the building, as well as our engineer and contractor. So basically, Audubon is shut down and taking all their toys home until spring comes around the corner. Any questions on the panel replacement project? Okay. Yes, sir.
We will have to carry some money over into the next fiscal year. And will we need a special appropriation at that point in time, or how will we handle that, Deb?
We would probably bring it as a budget amendment in January or February after we've reconciled what the actual expenses were this year and then the balance of what is to be spent. However, I'm not sure how much of the impact, I'm not sure if it's going to be on the highway fund or on capital asset replacement. If it's mostly highway facility, it will be the highway fund, right?
Yes,
Yeah.
it's mostly highway fund, and it'll be just, ERA's only got a couple $1,000s left on any pay request submittals for their portion, so we're hardly anything at this point. Next up, dryer lint project at the nursing home. GHR engineers and associates provided their proposed scope of work. We presented to the nursing home board on November 9th, seeking approval to move forward and post the bid. They did give us approval to move forward. It's been posted. We met on Friday, the 20th of November with a mandatory pre-bid meeting. We did, on the front end, contact 7 contractors locally who could all do the work. We had 3 show up at our pre-bid or mandatory pre-bid meeting. Would have liked to have a few more, but felt good with the 3 that were here. As of this morning, with talking with all 3, they are all 3 providing bids this Friday. We're still providing some of their subcontractors tours of the nursing home in the area, the laundry, chapel area where the work is going to be done. So anticipate, getting 3 bids this Friday at 2 o'clock when our bid opening is. And I'll be able to report back next month on what happens, as well as then going to the nursing home board for approval to move forward with the project. I did place on your desks prior to just an updated project schedule. There's actually 2 pages there. On top is the lint filtration project for your information. Behind it on the back page is the next topic of discussion is the fire damper project at the nursing home. What is a fire damper? Well, a fire damper basically is a closure that can automatically close in the event of a fire. Fire alarms go off. Air vents, there's generally at least 2 in every occupant's room, a 3rd in the bathroom, that shuts off the air vents so that it mitigates or slows down fire. There are also fire dampers in fire walls in construction. We knew that there was about 500 or so within the building once it was constructed. But even that was a little bit of an unknown because of the unfortunate litigation that was going on towards the end of the construction project. The county never received the as-built for the nursing home. With GHR's help, we went through every vendor who did work during the construction project, trying to come up with as-built. We did indeed go to the engineer and the architect, and they no longer had them. Even went as far as trying to go to the city of Urbana, who was very helpful in providing us with a lot of information that was sent to them for their records and permits and reviews. And unfortunately, they also had no as-built. We came up with an idea that we would do time and material and hire an engineer and a couple of our laborers, our maintenance folks, and go through the building, crawl through the building to identify. But before we got to that point, GHR uncovered from a past file about 200 additional fire dampers from a project they did about 5 years ago. And then Kirk from our office spent about a week going through the stacks and volumes of material from the construction project, including all the change orders, and he was able to put together, with help of the change orders, I think the difference. So we're looking at now approximately 1,000 fire dampers that exist in the nursing home. The reason we need to look at them is that in October, the Illinois Department of Public Health was in and doing a life safety. And one of the life safety measures that the nursing home is not kept up on is making sure the integrity, the working capability of each and every fire damper has to be done every 4 years, and they've not. So they were redlined for that. They've negotiated a period of time to get this done. They have to have everything certified as working by April 15th of 2016. So we've kind of been pushing this through, trying to get it moving. GHR has produced the documentation. I will go to their board next week to seek approval to put a bid out on the streets. The huge unknown to this is we do not know what the cost will be. GHR is not able to give us an estimate. We've talked to, and they've talked to several companies in Chicago, but can't quite give us an accurate price yet for the nursing home. So we will seek it. Nursing home staff is aware of this, and we'll see what the bids come forward as, and then see what ability they have to cover the costs. So, but it is a significant issue, and one that they have pushed forward as quickly as possible. So, any questions?
Okay. Again, that's another one of those items that we're going to have to take care of. Any other questions from Dana? If not, I'd like to go to the chair's report, item 9, and be thankful I do not have a report. I will take this time to wish you all a Merry Christmas, and thanks for all the help that you've provided in the last year. This has been about a year since we started this, and the committee's worked hard, and I think you've done a lot of good. So again, thank you for your participation, and look forward to working with you in the coming year. The next future meeting will be Tuesday, January 5th, 2016, at 6:30 p.m. in the Lyle Shields Meeting Room at Brookins. Item 10, there were no action items today. Therefore, there will be no items to be placed on the consent agenda. And under item 11, I would like and entertain a motion for adjournment. So moved. Mr. Hartke, Mr. Raldo. Committee adjourned. Thank you.